It still feels good. It still feels pretty good, 30-0. Just sweeping the Jets. We're going to talk playoff standings, and we're going to talk deeper dive in this video. What is up, Finn fans? Like I said in that intro, 30-0. Still feeling good. Enjoying it. Still the number 2 seed, sitting at 10-4. Unfortunately, couldn't take care of business last Monday, but we definitely made up for it and took care of business yesterday. So what we're going to do, deeper dive, we're going to talk stats, we're going to talk things that they were saying. Then I'm going to go into playoff standings, all that good stuff. So Tua Tagovailoa, 3,921 yards. That is number 1. 71 completion percentage. That is number 1. 25 touchdowns, tied for 4th. 10 interceptions, tied for 6th most. And 106 rating. That is number 2. I think Brock Purdy has number 1. And give you a quick little update on what Tua Tagovailoa's stats are without Tyreek Hill on the field. Now, these aren't stats not targeting Tyreek Hill. These are stats when Tyreek Hill is physically off of the field. Because I know a lot of times when you want to talk positive about Tua or you want to say something good, people want to try to find the little things in there to pinpoint and yada yada bing bang bing. No, this isn't Tua not targeting Tyreek because he's still going to take coverage away and blah blah blah. Nope. These are statistics with Tyreek Hill off the field. Tua Tagovailoa is 123 for 155. Essentially, he has a 79% completion percentage, 1,316 passing yards, 6 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, and he has a 116.8 passer rating without Tyreek Hill on the field. So again, I will say this one more time, and then we can put this whole discussion to bed. Does Tyreek Hill make the Miami Dolphins better? 1,000,000%. To me, he should be the league MVP. Does Tyreek Hill make Tua Tagovailoa better? 100%. Tyreek Hill made Patrick Mahomes better. Tyreek Hill would make Brock Purdy better. Tyreek Hill would make Zach Wilson better. Tyreek Hill is a generational talent, and Tyreek Hill is a ridiculous player. That being said, does Tua Tagovailoa need Tyreek Hill on the field to be successful? No. Yesterday proved that, and his stats prove it as well. Put it to bed. Raheem Mostert, 966 yards, 3rd most in the NFL. 18 rushing touchdowns, number 1 in the NFL, and now number 1 as a franchise record. I think altogether he has 20 touchdowns. I think he has 2 receiving touchdowns. Tyreek Hill, with missing a game, 1,542 yards. That is number 1 in the NFL. He still can break the record. Again, he just needs 458 more yards with 3 games left. It's not out of the picture. 12 touchdowns is number 1 in the NFL. Now, this was from Mike McDaniel talking about Tyreek Hill. He said he was pretty close to playing this afternoon versus New York. This is from yesterday. But the team felt it was best to have him sit out. McDaniel says making this decision was not an easy one. And we saw the video when we saw everything with him running on the field and him dancing and stuff. It was better for him not to overexert himself because we're going to need him for the Cowboys, for the Ravens, for the Bills. Because, again, we win the next 3, and I'm going to get to that in the second half of the video. We clinched the number 1 seed. But we're going to need him, and we're going to need some other guys for this big push on the second half of the season. So that's probably why you didn't see Javon Holland, you didn't see X, you didn't see Tyreek Hill, because we need him to get rested, or Robert Hunt. Need him to get rested because we need him for the next 3 games. And Jalen Waddle, 964 yards, 16th in the NFL, and 4 touchdowns. He's going to break 1,000 yards. So, again, 2,000-yard receivers in that aspect. Then we flip it to the defensive side. Bradley Chubb. Everyone, even myself included, last year was like, man, we gave up a lot and we gave him a lot of money, and he didn't really produce. Well, 6 forced fumbles is number 1 in the NFL. 9.5 sacks is tied for 10th in the NFL. He had a day yesterday. He was just eating. He came in his post-game press conference and said that he felt bad about last week throwing his helmet. It felt like he cost the team, and he wanted to come back and make it up to him. And boy, oh boy, did he. Christian Wilkins, 8 sacks, tied for 13th. That man is going off. He had, 3.5 last year, give or take? And I'm like, hey, you want to be an all-around back? You want to get paid linebacker, defensive tackle. Jeez, Doug. You want to be paid top one, you got to get after the quarterback. 8 sacks. I think that is number one amongst defensive tackles. So get your money. Jalen Ramsey versus Garrett Wilson. Jalen Ramsey shadowed Garrett Wilson 54.8% of the snaps. 1 target, 0 receptions, 0 yards, coverage rate of a 69.6%. He was going off. So, that being said, we'll talk a little bit more about the Miami Dolphins, 30-0. Now, a lot of people are poo-pooing what we did. Poo-poo. They are poo-pooing what we did because it was the Jets. Because the Jets suck. Well, again, I talked about it ad nauseum, but that Jet defense was really good. And the Miami Dolphins didn't have Tyreek Hill, Javon Holland, Jerome Baker, Jalen Phillips, Xavier Howard, Connor Williams, Elliott, or Austin Jackson at one point. They didn't have 8 of their starters out there. 8. 2 of them offensive line. 3 of them in the secondary. And we dropped 30 on them. 30-0. 4-1 on the division. Complete sweep. Keep this up. The playoffs start now, man. You're going to face some really good teams down the stretch. Keep it up. Beat these teams. That being said, let's transfer over to playoffs. And you see here, the Miami Dolphins are sitting at the number 2 seed. Baltimore has that X next to them, meaning they have clinched a playoff spot. Not meaning they clinched a number 1 seed. They just clinch a spot in the playoffs. You got Kansas City. And if the Dolphins beat the Cowboys on Sunday, they will clinch a playoff spot as well. So it doesn't matter if the Dolphins beat the Cowboys, they're going to the playoffs. It doesn't matter if it's 1, 2, 3, 4 seed or in the wild card spot. If they beat the Cowboys, they will be in the playoffs. You have Kansas City here 9-5, Jacksonville, who lost to the Jaguars, sitting at 8-6, and you got Cleveland sitting there at 9-5, which I think if they lose next week and the Ravens win, the Ravens clinch the North. So it's going to be very interesting how that all pans out. And we'll look at that schedule and everything. Cincinnati 8-6, and then the Colts 8-6. And you have these other 2 teams sitting down here, 8-6, Houston and Buffalo. It's going to get very interesting. Now you see here, the Dolphins have a 98% chance of making the playoffs and a 60% chance of winning the division. That at one point was like 98% chance. But I think what happened was, being that Buffalo beat the Chiefs and the Cowboys, that really boosted their chance of winning the division. And the loss to Tennessee also hurt them as well, because if the Dolphins would have beat Tennessee, then they just would have had to win next week against the Cowboys and they would have clinched the East. But unfortunately, since they lost, it kind of still opens that door for the Buffalo Bills. But the fact that Buffalo has a 7% chance of making the Super Bowl and the Dolphins have a 6, bulletin board material, put it out there, get out of town, Charlie Brown. But take care of business. Speaking of taking care of business, we're going to look at that. We're going to update this Mamma Jam. And I do think that the Eagles are going to win. So there's that. So you're looking at it here again. This is where we're looking at. You look at next week. Next week, the Bills, there's no way that the Bills are going to lose to the Chargers. The Chargers let the Raiders put 63 on them. I know they fired all their coaches. Will there be a fire in their butt? Will they change some things? No, Justin Herbert isn't their quarterback. They're dealing with the Bills are going to win. I'd be surprised if the Bills don't rest their starters by halftime. I think the Bills destroy this one just for poops and giggles. I think the Bengals beat the Steelers. I think the Browns beat the Texans. I think the Broncos beat the Patriots. I think the Chiefs beat the Raiders. I think the Jets beat Washington. Colts beat Falcons. Seattle beats Tennessee. I think Jaguars beat the Bucks. Now, in this scenario, the Miami Dolphins have to beat the Cowboys. And I do think the 49ers will beat the Ravens. At some point, the Jaguars gave the 49ers a hard time, and the Rams gave the 49ers, the Ravens, not the 49ers, a hard time. I think the 49ers are going to give them a real hard time here. So, as you can see, Even with the same record, they are tied here and they get the number one. And I think it has some underlining because the conference is 7-3, their conference record, something. Strength of whatever, blah, 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 this or that. There's something there that gives them the lead over the Dolphins. Then we come into a very, very, very important week for the Miami Dolphins. Now, in this scenario, again, at this point, the Dolphins beat the Cowboys. They have clinched a playoff spot. It doesn't matter at that point. In this scenario, if the Miami Dolphins beat the Baltimore Ravens, they have clinched the AFC East. And the Bills, it doesn't matter if the Bills win or lose, the Dolphins are the AFC East champions. Now, I think Cleveland wins this one. I think the Colts win this one. I think the Bills beat the Patriots. But there's one I wouldn't be surprised if the Patriots beat the Bills, because the Patriots still have a pretty good defense. I think the Texans beat the Titans. I'm going to go with the Chiefs over the Bengals. And I'm going to go with the Broncos over the Chargers. And the Jaguars over them, and I think Seattle over them. So now you see here, and Buffalo has snuck in to that number 7 seed. And if you go back a week, it has a lot to do with the fact that the Broncos have lost, and the Texans. So I think if the Texans win, no, it don't matter. It doesn't matter, and it's because the Texans. The Texans would have to beat the Browns. So we'll keep that updated. We'll keep that in the back of our head as I make videos of who we should root for coming on Wednesdays/Thursdays. But if the Texans win the next two, the Bills will still have. So the Bills still have to worry about teams playing properly. But we'll just leave at who I think that they will win. But even the Broncos and the Bengals. So like the Bengals would probably have to win. That would push the Bills out. Could the Bengals win? It's a possibility. But Bengals, Texans are the Bills' nemesis at this point. Because if the Bengals and Texans keep winning and going 10-6, it'll push the Bills out. Go to the final week. Like I said, with the Miami Dolphins winning those 2 games, it doesn't matter if the Bills win. If they don't win the division, the Miami Dolphins have clinched the AFC East with a win against the Ravens and with a win against the Baltimore Ravens. But if the Dolphins lose to the Baltimore Ravens and the Dolphins lose to the Buffalo Bills, then they lose the division. If they win the division. And in this scenario, we'll play it out, right? We'll play it out. So they lost to the Ravens, but they beat the Bills. We'll try this one. I think the Ravens beat the Steelers. I think the Patriots beat the Jets. I think the Browns beat the Bengals, even though I think we want the Bengals to win that one because look, it'd push Buffalo out. But I think actually that could go either way. It really could go either way. But just for poops and giggles, I'm doing the Browns. I think the Texans beat the Colts. That pushes them out. So that's interesting. Because even with me having them lose to the Browns, if the Texans beat the Colts, pushes the Bills out. I have the Jaguars, Chiefs, and I have the Broncos here. So with that scenario, the Miami Dolphins the Bills would not make the playoffs. Even with the Bills winning the next 2 games, there's a chance they don't make the playoffs at 10-7 if the Texans and the Broncos get to 10-7. So if the Bills get to 10-7 and the Texans and the Broncos get to 10-7, the Bills don't make the playoffs, which is crazy town. But if the Bills win in this scenario, they win the division and they go to the number 4 seed because they lost to the Jaguars. And they would have to face the Browns. The Dolphins would face the Jaguars and the Chiefs would face the Texans in this scenario. But again, if we go back to this week and the Dolphins beat the Ravens, then it don't matter none. But the Dolphins will have to face the Bills at home back-to-back weeks. So I prefer them to win out and clinch the number 1 seed. There's a lot to take in. But I will make another video giving you guys who we should root for and stuff each week. But again, remember this. We want the Texans and the Broncos and the Colts to get to 10-7. If the Texans, Broncos, and Colts get to 10-7, then the Bills would have to hope and beat the Dolphins. If not, they are knocked out of the playoffs. But other than that, I'll see you guys tomorrow with the film breakdown. And then Wednesday, we'll rehash this. Because like I said, I'm going to take a break from the picks. And the maybe Wednesday, I'll do the power ranking. Thursday, I'll do who we should root for. Because the picks kind of fell to the wayside. No one gives a crap about the picks. That gets like the least amount of views out of videos I do. Same thing with the power ranking. So that's why I'm trying to change things up for the last couple of weeks. But I'll definitely see you tomorrow with the film breakdown, and I'll see you tomorrow night with the episode 5 of Hard Knocks. But other than that, like usual, stay classy. My fins up.